The third practice of Notre Dame's fall camp was a great day, Jack, for offensive and defensive line coach quotes. I'm going to kick it to you. That's Jack Sobel. I'm Tyler Horka, blueandgold.com, Blue and Gold Illustrated. What did Joe Rudolph have to say today?
Well, we'll get into more of offensive line stuff later, but the hook, if you will, was an outside zone drill where they were working on zone blocking. He told a couple players, don't worry about going outside, worry about blasting the parentheses other guy. You can fill in the blank there. But that's an early candidate for fall camp, but I'm to understand Al Washington had a pretty good day too.
Yeah, absolutely. Al Washington not as forthcoming with the expletives, I would say, but just a lot of motivational stuff. That I spent a lot of my time today standing within earshot of Washington. Marcus Freeman as well. I thought it was a very, very notable thing that he hardly watched the defensive backs. I don't think he ever went over to the offense in the 25 minutes. I want to make that known. We watched 25 minutes of practice today, so that's five-minute periods. I didn't see Marcus Freeman go to the offensive side of the field at all. I know you were over there. Did you see Freeman hanging around the quarterbacks or the running backs or anybody?
Not much. I wasn't really looking for him, to be honest, but nothing that comes to mind.
So Freeman was standing in proximity of me watching Al Washington, and I mean there were some cliche things like in every single collision somebody's the hammer and somebody's the nail. Obviously he wants his guys to be the hammer, but I thought one that was just kind of telling was they were the two defensive linemen lined up, smashing into a stationary sled, as we determined to call it. Real long foam pad. Obviously, you hit it as hard as you can. It's not going anywhere, so Al Washington is really telling these guys to go after it. And he said, hey, we're going to watch the tape after this, and we're going to see who had 2 feet in the ground and who did not have 2 feet in the ground. And I just thought it was a good way of saying, hey, we're watching you. We're going to go back and watch you again. We know who's playing well, who's giving it their all, who's all into this. And again, this is only the third day of Notre Dame's fall camp. So I had a very good time today watching Al Washington coach these guys because I think he's a very good in-practice coach. I know people have said what they want about the recruiting. Is this defensive line set up for the future? Yada, yada, yada. I watched with my 2 eyes 25 minutes of practice. We get pretty good access, and he did a really good job. And I know Joe Rudolph does the same.
Yeah, Joe Rudolph, it's been interesting watching him work because, he's been on the guys more than I can remember in the past, and B, the focus continues to be I know we talked about earlier the outside zone drills, but it's the focus continues to be blitz pickup because, again, we've said it in previous videos, Notre Dame, I think, has determined that the big problem with the offensive line last year was they didn't pick up blitzes well enough on third down. They threw a lot of blitzes at them on day one of practice. That was one of the big notes on the defense, I think. They were blitzing a lot. And did they handle it well? It was a mixed bag. And Joe Rudolph was on his guys about that. You know, whenever they're looking in the wrong gap, even in walkthroughs, in run-throughs, and individual drills, he's been on them about that. Today, when they brought the offense together for the first time, they just worked on different blitz pickup calls, pass protection calls. Rudolph was happier with the guys today than I thought he was in the last 2 days. There was a lot more clapping, a lot more, hey, it's a good job. Again, we only saw the individual part, so who knows how they held up in team. But it's a sign it's a step in the right direction, I think, for Notre Dame.
Obviously, a big part of blitz pickup is the running back game as well. And I thought a cool anecdote. We talked to D'Lo McCullough, Notre Dame running backs coach, and pretty much all of the running backs after the practice as well. A good chunk of them, definitely a handful of them. And in every single conversation that I had, whether it was freshman Kedron Young, I talked to McCullough, Jadarian Price, Devin Ford, they were all like, yeah, we're really trying to hone in on our pass protection and picking up blitzes. And cool little anecdote before we get back to some other things that we actually saw in practice. D'Lo McCullough was asked, hey, who's the best linebacker, Notre Dame linebacker at blitzing? Like, who do you lose sleep over knowing, like, hey, that guy's going to come after our quarterback in one of these practices and one of my position players is going to have to pick him up? Yep. He mentioned Jack Kaiser, Drake Bowen. They're just kind of bull rushers, if you will. They drop their shoulder and they'll get around you, bigger guys. But he said the craftiest guy on the team is Kingston Viliamuasa.
When you started this conversation, like, I wasn't there for this quote, but it doesn't surprise me whatsoever. Like, we've heard a time and time again. Yep. We've kind of seen him in practice a couple of times where, like, KVA is a tough guy to block. He won't just run through you. He's a big, strong guy, but he will dip around you. He will rip through you. He will swim around you. His football IQ, we've talked about it before, is really advanced for his age. The pass rush arsenal is really, really good for him too. And I talked to Al Golden. I asked him a question about, like, kind of building off this, like, who are some guys who aren't necessarily starters but are going to be involved in those third down packages. KVA was one of the guys he mentioned. It was a bunch of guys because with the Vipers and the ends and the linebackers, like it's a whole bunch of guys who have shown pass rush potential. We're going to see some freaky stuff from Al Golden in these third down packages, and I'm really excited to see what it looks like against A&M.
Freaky is a good word, and when getting back to Kingston Viliamu-Asa, crafty, I think is the word you have to use to describe him, because he is all those things, big, strong, physical, but when you combine that with craft and technique and just savviness, the ability to, one, know what you're doing, two, and this is what McCullough said too, knowing how to do it and how to get to the quarterback, Viliamu-Asa definitely has that in the bag. I want to get back to some of the things that we actually saw in practice. I think one of the big reasons why Marcus Freeman was hanging out where I was hanging out is because one of the cooler things I saw was a rotation of every single position group in the defense, rotating through Al Washington's coaching station, where you saw the defensive backs, cornerbacks, then safeties, linebackers, and obviously he started with the defensive line, working through getting off the line of scrimmage and just being able to fight through the guy that's in front of you. One of the cooler things was he would call out two different directions, two different orders, and he would say, seal left, rip right, or seal right, swim to the left. And you would have to see a line of guys. It was probably 10 or so guys across from each other from the same position group have to execute those two orders. And he would say, hey, that was a good rep. That was a bad rep. Let's do it again. I saw Donovan Heinisch have a good rep and then have a bad one. And a graduate student said, hey, Donnie, you're better than that. Let's do that again. So details, I think has been a really big thing in the first three Notre Dame practices. And the last thing that I will talk about what I saw in practice was Max Bola is an awesome in-practice coach. Maybe I wouldn't say better than Al Washington, but right up there with him in terms of just being engaged, enthusiastic, all of those different things that you want to see from a position coach. And today was just the innovation of some of the drills that I saw. Like, I hadn't seen Notre Dame do this before. You had two players just standing as targets 15 yards away from a player that was about to go through the drill. He would backpedal. The player that's going through the drill would backpedal, and then there was a graduate student with the football about to throw the ball at one of the two guys, and you had no idea who it was going to be. You had to plant, stick, go get the football. I saw really good closing speed out of all of Notre Dame's linebackers. I think Jack Kaiser was great. Kingston Viliamu-Asa was great. Drake Bowen. Only two guys in the entire 5-minute period, Jack, intercepted passes. It was freshman Teddy Rizak with the first one, and then right after that, Jaden Osbury. I think the athleticism that Notre Dame has in that group, I know you lost J.D. Bertrand, you lost Maris Leofau, but just top to bottom in terms of athleticism, I think you're starting to see Notre Dame get to where it wants to be with the linebackers. Yeah. Marcus Freeman was watching that today. Obviously, Max Bola, Al Washington, everything that happened on that side of the field today was really impressive to me. Other side of the field, just some notes that we need to know from what you saw.
Yeah, the big drill that I thought was really interesting was Mike Denbrock working on some motions. He was very specific. Like, they wouldn't really run the play. They would practice getting the timing right, which is more of a quarterback thing, and getting the urgency right, which is the motion man thing. Denbrock made it clear, like, motion with urgency. He said he kind of led his pre-drill spiel with, like, motions are a weapon. Like, if we do this right, is what Denbrock was saying, then motions are a weapon for our offense, and they give us tons of advantages. And I think it's kind of been proven in data studies with football. Like, team offenses who motion more are generally more difficult to defend. And some of the motions I saw were Mitchell Evans kind of motioning outside for a wheel route, giving him some momentum there. Jaden Greathouse motion across the formation, handoff to Jajarian Price. Kind of screws up the linebacker eye discipline is the word I was looking for there. Another one where Mikey Gilbert motioned across the formation, kind of ran a deep route, didn't really finish it because that wasn't the point of the drill. But Mike Denbrock really loved that one. He said, like, now you're talking my language was the quote I have him down for that one. There was another motion, a tight end, I think it was Cooper Flanagan, motioning across the formation, in motion at the snap, a kick out, does a kick out block on a run play. It's just a lot of interesting stuff that I don't think we saw as much in the past with Notre Dame, and it's going to make their offense more dangerous, and it's a big thing that Mike Denbrock is emphasizing in fall camp.
Yeah, I like the positive affirmation. I think there's been a lot of that in camp, and I've definitely seen it on the defensive side, so it's kind of cool when you bring it up on the offensive side. Now you're talking my language. I like that. We're going to talk the language of Notre Dame fans because I know they're a little bit obsessed with this guy, Jack, and we at least need to spend maybe half a minute on him. Tyler Buchner. First thing that we saw when we walked into practice today was number 26 in white riding the bike, the fan bike, in the pit which is the area designated for injured Notre Dame players. So my first thought was he's not going to participate today, but he had his jersey on. He had his get-up on. And then what we see when practice actually gets going is Buchner not able to go through all of these wide receiver drills, but the former quarterback who started 3 games for Notre Dame, Gator Bowl MVP a couple of seasons ago, was throwing passes to Notre Dame wide receivers. Is that going to be a common thing? Absolutely not. Once Buchner is healthy, he's going to get back into doing what he does and going through the wide receiver drills. You saw him signaling the other day. That's kind of his role, but just kind of, quirky, and it needs to be said that, hey, Tyler Buchner was throwing passes at a Notre Dame football practice.
Yeah, he was throwing practice in the same manner that like Mike Brown would throw passes during wide receiver individual drills. But again, I think we should stress this. Squish this bug once and for all. That like, well, yes, Buchner's obviously a great guy, great teammate. That's why they let him back on the team. Obviously a great story. He's a walk-on wide receiver. His role will be not indifferent from the typical walk-on wide receivers wearing numbers in the 80s. And he just had a minor injury, probably like a pulled groin or hamstring from the way he was walking, but nothing long-term probably to be considered there. And again, first 2 practices he's been signaling plays. He's clearly doing whatever he can to help the team, and that's really what makes this a nice story, I think.
Yeah, come Tuesday when we will talk to you guys again, we probably won't be spending a whole lot of time talking about Tyler Buchner unless we get to see one-on-ones and he makes a catch against Benjamin Morrison or Christian Gray or something like that. We're not expecting that, but we will be here to bring you all of the Notre Dame football news, whatever does happen in that practice on Tuesday. That's when you will see us next in this capacity, but definitely keep it glued to this Blue and Gold YouTube channel because we will have more content between now and then, and definitely go to blueandgold.com for all of our written content because there is plenty of that from this week, and there will be a little bit more through the weekend as well. So that's Jack Sobel. I'm Tyler Horka. We are blueandgold.com and Blue and Gold Illustrated.